Tanya. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. And yourself?
I'm very good. Hello, everyone. This is Donna Nauman, nurse practitioner, functional medicine. And today I am sitting with Tanya Chamberlain, and she is going to be talking to us a little bit about a position that she's starting in her own practice, and it's called a doula. And so I am so fascinated with the spirit of life and life in general. And Tanya is really going to be explaining like the last days of our life and how to make that a transition that is spiritual, it's amazing, it's individualized. So Tanya, many people don't even know what a doula is. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. So the word doula was mostly used as birth doula or midwife. Um, and in the year 2000, it started up in New York, where a team of people came together wanting to provide support as midwives, but for death. So they played with the name of it for a while. Death doula has been used quite a bit, and now end of life doula, which I use. I feel that people just respond differently to end of life doula. It's a little softer, doesn't scare people away so much. So yeah, it's not quite the same in the sense that I don't know about the US, but in Canada, you can get a birth doula and there is like insurance to cover that. We're still pretty new in Ottawa here in Canada. Like it's still very new, and we're still just trying to educate people about what it is that we do.
Yeah. I know like for years I did hospice and people would really like back away from that word like hospice and in this scary sense. And I think like you're starting to bring this whole beautiful essence about we're just transitioning.
That's right.
Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that transitioning and how do you help somebody do that, or what does that look like, or like why would somebody hire you? Because everybody needs this, everybody, but people don't understand that.
Well, I mean, the question I get a lot is what is the difference between end of life doula or death doula and hospice worker? And there are big differences, and both roles are needed very much. I'm a nurse as well, but if I were working in hospice, I would be, like, for instance, working here in Ottawa, I'd be working under a union and I would be doing my nursing role and giving medications and things like that. And as an end of life doula, you're not doing that. You're not going into the nursing role. You can do a lot of support. Both roles will offer support in a different way. But end of life doula is really just listening to the client or the patient to see what it is they need at end of life. And that looks different for everyone. So with some people, it may be that they just want to talk about their life. They want to have someone to just listen and hold space for them. Other people may have a plan of what that end of life looks like, who they want to be there in the room, who maybe they don't want anyone with them, but they will often get in touch with an end of life doula to say, this is what I want it to look like. And my family has a plan, a different plan of how they want it to be, but I actually want to go home. I want to die at home. I want to have a home funeral. So a lot of times it's just preparations. We could act as a liaison between different things like home funerals, green burials now have really become popular. Just talking about what it is they want. Some people just want legacy work. They want to talk about leaving a legacy and what that looks like. And the rest of it is already dealt with. So it's very, very individual. And what I'm seeing a lot lately is families contacting end of life doulas for support rather than just the patient going through it. It's families that want to know, how do I talk to my mom or dad or grandpa or grandma? How do I hold space? What do I do? And they're contacting us to get that support and to have, someone to tell them what to do.
Yeah. So is there a little bit of spirituality, a little bit like is there prayer work, meditation work? You're having this space with the patient you're helping the patient move from this life to the next. How would that look like?
So again, it's very individual. Now I'm
I
very
like that it is.
spiritual. Like
Yeah.
I'm very spiritual. I love that part of it. I love to be able to offer that part of it. You know, I'm an empath, I'm intuitive. So if they support that and they are open to that,
Mhm.
I can just be with them at the bedside and do that kind of work and to help them transition in that way. But I always sort of like feel them out and see where their
Yeah.
beliefs are, their belief system. You know, maybe they follow a certain religion and they really want that to be honored.
Mhm.
So I would then, you know, find out exactly what prayers they want and offer that. Maybe they want a candlelight vigil. They want certain people to do songs, prayers. So it's finding out what it is the person really wants and then offering that. If they are spiritual and they are open to meditation, then I have all kinds of things we could do. And that really makes me happy because I feel that I thrive in that area. But it really, really just depends. And we can't sort of put our thoughts or our opinions on them. If
Mhm.
they come to us and they're just very logical and they don't believe, they don't have necessarily any big beliefs, we just have to find out what it is that they want. And if they just want someone to talk to or they want plans put in place, then we
Mhm.
help with that.
Nice. Could you describe maybe what one of the meditations, what would be one of your favorites that you like to do with the
I
patient?
think so. I mean, my go to is always like grounding meditations because of what I do and who I am. I often will, you know, sort of have this feeling of floating up or just being in a lot of energy.
Mhm.
And I feel anxious about that sometimes. And I will sort of feel that like uncomfortable feeling in my heart chakra, or I'm getting headaches. And then I know, okay, I have to ground. And for me, it would be more aligning myself with nature, being outside in the elements. But even just sitting here and taking a second, in 1 minute, I could close my eyes, do some breath work, and just feel that light from source
Mhm.
coming into my body and just going into the ground. And then just feeling my feet on the earth or on the floor, wherever I am, and just feeling grounded and going through that. Anyone can do that in a minute or two. And I think that that's the most important because when people are in those stages of end of life, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of fears, there's a lot of anxiety. Sometimes they just need to breathe and ground themselves and
Yeah.
then start fresh again. So that would be, I think that that one would be the biggest go-to for me, but
Mhm.
there are other ones. There's tons of beautiful meditations for end of life.
Yeah, I love meditation. I think everybody should be doing it. Doesn't matter if it's end of life or whatever. There's plenty of science and scientific data, MRIs, that prove that meditation really does settle the brain down. And I
Yeah.
think when patients are in that space of their passing, there is anxiety and they don't want to tell anybody because they're already so afraid or they're in pain. There's so many different elements to this end of life thing. And the fact that you get to sit there, then you're spending time with them by their bedside, and maybe you're just listening. What does that look like?
Well, that was the biggest lesson for me coming into this role, being a nurse, and then coming into end of life doula was a really big switch for me because I went from talking all the time, asking a lot of questions. Are you in pain? Do you want pain medication? Are you hungry? Do you want me to reposition you? How are you feeling? Like as a nurse, you have that, you want to ask questions all the time. You want to do assessments, and you can only do that by asking questions. So when I got into this program, it was like, whoa, I kept being told, you don't have to ask questions. You don't have to talk. These people want you to hold sacred space. They want you to sit with them. And if you feel like you can't do anything, what you can do is one thing I will do, which was taught from Conscious Dying Institute, is matching breath. So you sit with the person that's dying and you match their breath. So you get on like so that you're breathing in unison.
Mhm.
And that in itself is huge because you feel like you're aligned with the person. And sometimes the person, without knowing, will really respond to that because they just feel supported, even if it is with breath.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that you can do if you can't do anything else. It's really about listening to what they need.
Yeah, I think that listening is the hard thing because like I just want to talk and how are you feeling? And like what do you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to talk, like,
Yeah.
but then that just being in that space and just allowing and to be uncomfortable with that is okay too. Because in that uncomfortable, the intuition starts to kick in, and then maybe you're getting messages that kind of help the patient. Is that
Yeah, that's very, very clear. That's sort of how it is for me. I can't speak for every doula out there, but that was sort of the whole reason that I got into this part of my life where I was leaving nursing and getting into end of life, because whenever I was in these situations where people were passing, something bigger than me would take over. And it's like as if I knew what to do without thinking about it. And it was just a feeling of, okay, so this person needs me to hold her hand. This person needs me to remind her that her husband's waiting for her. This person wants me to just sit and not say anything. And it's like I just knew. And that was the intuitive part. But I really felt guided to this career because for the first time in my life, I never questioned anything. I never had to learn these behaviors. It was just part of me that when I went into a room and someone was getting close to that, I just knew. I just knew what the next steps were. And I work with that a lot and I trust my gut.
yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things, you know, I think nurses in general are very intuitive. I think we don't even realize how intuitive we are. And I think it's so important that you have come to this place where you understand that. Because I also think like you have to protect yourself from the energy of other people. And you're dealing with a very energetic transitioning of people. And then you have family that are all around that have their own energy. And then there's you in the middle of all these different kinds of energies. And so your role then becomes like this bringing together the family, the patient, the spirit. Even if they don't want spirit, you are still there modifying that situation, bringing everything together. Does that sound kind of?
That's exactly it. So it's really important for myself and for other end of life doulas or hospice nurses or any of that to really do a lot of self-care. And when you leave a beautiful involved situation like that, that you're like you have your own practice to clear. Like for myself, I would smudge, I'd come home, I would pray, I would meditate, I would have a shower and I would visualize light coming into my crown and going down. I mean, like that is so important because we're like a sponge when we get in that, all of the energies coming to us. And if they're feeling nervous and they don't know what to do, they're bringing it to us.
Yeah.
So there are days where you can leave and really feel heavy. And it's important to sort of know how to move that energy and bring the light back in for ourselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to protect ourselves, our energy too, because this is
Yeah.
hard work. Like when people are passing away, there's
Yeah.
so much emotion, there's spirit, emotion, and some people don't even realize how much spirit there is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, that's my belief. But as you
Yeah.
said, each person is individualized, and you're not putting your beliefs on people. You're allowing people. And I think you talked a little bit about also empowering, like
Yeah,
how
empowerment. Like this is a word that comes to me a lot when I think of people that are at end of life. They're feeling like they're losing their power. They're feeling like, someone's given them a death sentence and this is happening and they are powerless. And that's really not the case. I mean, that's why we're there to sort of bring that power back and to say, you do have power. You can decide how you want this to be. You can decide who you want around you. You can decide if you want to be at home. I've had people tell me, well, can I be in nature when I go? Can I be outside? I want to be in the elements. I mean, these are all things that I would bring to the table to say, what do you picture when you see yourself going? Where do you see yourself? What do you see afterward? I mean, there's people now that are doing funerals before they die. And I think that's beautiful to be with all the people and say goodbye before you actually go.
Huh.
I think it's really something, and I think it's going to fly because more and more people want to be part of their own funeral. They want to have that legacy. They want to be able to connect with people, not when they're in a casket or when they've already gone. They want to connect with the people while they're alive. And what a beautiful way to do that.
I
So there's many aspects. And again, yeah, you don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to be religious. And I've worked with people that don't follow religion and aren't spiritual. Somehow they end up sort of feeling that, and sort of feeling, something like a lot of feedback I'll get is, I felt like a warm light, when my mom or dad was passing. I felt a calmness in the room that I've never experienced before. So even though they may not, believe in God or follow any type of religion, they have their own experiences. And it's to be open to that and, be an outlet for them.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. And I really, really like the have the party before you go. Cause like I want cake, I want clowns, I want balloons, I want music, like I want a party. And
Yeah,
like how much that's, and if you know you're gonna pass, like you have the ability to, put that together. I think that's an
for
awesome,
sure.
yeah, I think that's gonna be, yeah, I love that. I think that's a great idea. It's too
Yeah,
bad.
same here.
It's like everybody, yeah, everybody's going to come together after you're gone. Oh, and then they're sad. And I don't think we should be sad. I think we should be
Yeah,
celebrating.
I don't want my loved ones to be sad. Like I think of it as a celebration of life,
Me too.
and I think that we're seeing more and more of that. I know growing up, I used to like dread going to funerals and wakes, and it always had that dark sort of feeling, and it didn't feel good, and everybody was sad. And of course, as a child, I was picking up a lot of energy and not even realizing it. But things have really changed. Times have changed. It's not like that anymore. It doesn't have to be like that. I mean, there could be beautiful home funerals. I've when I was in school, I watched a couple of short films about that, like different ways. I know there was one teenager that had passed, and what the family wanted to do was have a home funeral, build a wooden casket, and have all the kids paint, and all the little ones come and paint
Oh,
messages. And I thought that was so beautiful.
huh.
And these are things that we can do. We can do this. I mean, just people don't know what their options are. People
Yeah.
don't know that when someone passes in the hospital, their loved one, that they can actually bring the body home with them. People don't know that. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of education, there's a lot of information that I feel needs to be said. People need to be educated on end of life.
I think we also need to transition away from what the word death means, transition away from the word because it's so fearful. And I mean, we're born and then we pass, which is another birth. It's another canal that we're going to. And I think it saddens me a lot. Like I was doing hospice back in like 1990, and it saddened me. Like people wait too late to get on it. Like people wait too long. Like by the time you get on hospice, sometimes they're like within a week of passing away. And hospice has really changed. Like they have now like you could be on it for a whole year and
Yeah.
you're just doing your transitioning things. And I think, people are afraid to say I'm going to pass, but I think at some point in your heart, and I think getting the family have a hard time too, but it's so beautiful to be in a
Hmm.
hospice program. And then if you don't pass away, well, so what? I mean, there's no law that
Yeah.
says you have to pass away if you're on hospice. I mean, if you
Yeah.
get better,
You've
you get
had that
better.
support, right?
Yeah, but during that time of, well, am I going to pass? You have people on your team that are
Yes.
helping you and bringing you forward. One of the things that I learned about when I first started in hospice was the whole grieving process that happens when people know they're going to pass. Could you speak to that just a little bit?
Are you referring to the 5 stages
Yeah,
of
that
grief? Yes, definitely. I mean, we've talked about that a lot in nursing, and as well as the last program I took for end of life at Conscious Dying Institute. And what I learned from it there was it's so individual. I mean, you could stay in a stage for a lot longer than what people think.
Mhm.
Some people get in that denial or anger stage and they're really not able to move to the next stage. And getting to acceptance at the end is different for everyone.
Yeah.
And, it's important to know that everyone's going to go through that stage in their own way, to honor that, to not try to rush them to the next stage, just to support them and where they're at. And I mean, a lot of times with anger, there's that fear and that sadness that's underneath all of that. So if you know the person on a deeper level, you're able to walk through that with them and get them to get to that part where they're able to let go of the anger, let the tears roll, and just sort of do some healing. So I think the one thing that we need to keep in mind with all of these stages is it really is individual. It doesn't necessarily roll out the way we've learned all of the stages to be. It will move around. Sometimes you'll go ahead and then you'll go back. And I think it's just honoring everyone's passage.
Hmm. And I think simultaneously the family's going through that same grieving process.
100%.
And so then you have a family that's in anger and a patient that's at acceptance. And then, like, I would imagine that your role is kind of bringing those two as a bridge.
Yeah, and that becomes very difficult because you're needing both parties to sort of respect where the other person's at, and that's very challenging because they're in it. So when they're in it, they can't really see anything else, but if they're in that anger stage, they're angry at the world, or they're blaming God, and why is this happening to my mom? And then the mother might be at a bargaining stage, or she may even have went through all of that and she's at acceptance, and she's so frustrated that this person's holding on to anger, she just wants to have peace. So they can clash. And being in that situation, it's really important to respect everyone's process and to sort of bring love to it. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's all about love,
Yeah.
and to bring love to the process and know, okay, this person's still there. We realize that you're here, but let's just bring some love into this and respect everyone's place. And it's really difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I would imagine too, like my niece was very sick and she was passing away in the hospital and the whole family is around and she was not really with us, and we were just kind of waiting for her to pass away. And she was doing like movements, like it was like she's moving up to Jesus. It was amazingly
Oh,
beautiful. And I'm just picturing you being there with us, helping us transition because like everybody was having a hard time. She was pretty young, 30. Um, and everybody's just there and nobody like, when is this going to happen? And then she's reaching up and nobody was really there to help us understand like what
oh,
was going on or to help us even do a prayer circle or like, I just feel like there could have been so many more beautiful things that could have, I mean, it was beautiful in its way, but having somebody there with us, like just would
to
have been,
help you navigate the feelings, the emotions. Because I feel that the person that is transitioning has all that support, with or without you. They have their angels, they have their spiritual team. And I don't believe anyone dies alone. But I think for you and the family, you guys could have really, really done with some support, somebody to just bring your hands together and say, she's okay, she's going to a better place, and to support you. That's so important.
yeah, it was so hard. It was so hard, like for my sister, like it just, I don't know. I just feel like there, if we would have had some, because there wasn't any hospice, there wasn't any, yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was so weird. Because like
Yeah,
coming from that hospice background, having people in the room kind of, I don't know. Um, So anyway, I think maybe she did have hospice. I don't know, but I just felt like it would have been nice to have a doula, like
Yeah.
someone who was just kind of, was hanging out with us and, making sure that everybody was okay and making sure that, because then you have all these other family dynamic things going on too, like.
Well, that's the thing. And when you're actually going through it, it's totally different. It's like being a nurse and having, your child go through a trauma where you have to go to the hospital. Like, you're not a nurse anymore. Now you're a mother.
Yeah.
And now you're falling apart. And it's the same sort of idea that when you have a family member that's passing, you're that family member. There's no nurse anymore. There's no anything. And it's the same for me, right? So it's having that person there to just guide you and hold your hand, breathe, meditate, whatever it is, just to give you that support.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that goes kind of hand in hand with that is also give you ideas of things that you can do to help your loved one be supported. Because like when they're unconscious and they're, in their final stages of life, we don't know what to do exactly. Like we're kind of just, we're there, we want to be of service, and like they're not awake. So like, how do you really know? And I maybe feel like the doula would kind of help. Like, why don't you touch their hand? Or why don't you, I don't know, what do you have some suggestions for that?
For sure. So the first thing I thought of when you mentioned that was, if a person's in that state where they're not awake, they're alive, and you're at the bedside feeling helpless, what I would suggest is just to match breath. So what you're doing is you're watching their chest or their tummy rise, and then you're just getting on that breath pattern with them. And that is a really good way to connect with them, connect with their spirit. If you are a spiritual person, for myself, if they were not awake, I would probably sit with them. Some people, I would hold their hand and I would get on their energy wavelength. So I would do a meditation and I would be there energetically. So it's like you're matching spirit to spirit. Now, this would be a situation where the person knew that I was supporting their passage and their transition. And I would say, this is what I can offer at the end. I would never just play with someone's energy or anything without permission. But if I knew that they wanted that, that's the kind of thing you can do when you're feeling helpless. And it's like, what can I do? You can always match breath and you can talk to them, because physically they may be sleeping, but their spirit is still alive. They can still hear and talk about how you're feeling and how you're there for them. And then just go to that energy level. If you know the person and the person is okay with it, get to that level, send them light, send them healing energy, send them love. Like, these are all things that we can do.
I love that. That's beautiful. How do people find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. We were talking about that earlier. I have a Facebook page under Tanya Lee Chamberland. That's my primary name. But my business page is Sacred Passage End of Life Doula. And it's connected to my page. You'll see it come up. I'm just finding at times I don't get the notifications right away if someone sends a message to that page. So they can send me a message on Messenger. They can send an email. I'm at tanyachamberlain@hotmail.com. And, I'm also on Instagram, which is, I have my Instagram connected to Facebook. And I think on Instagram, I'm Tanya Chamberlain 6147. I think that's the code. I don't use Instagram a lot, but you're probably safer to go Facebook or email. And I am currently working on a website, and that should be completed by the end of the month, at the end of August, early September.
Nice. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I so believe in it. Just, I didn't do hospice very long, but long enough to know. One of my first experiences in the hospital was a patient that passed away. And it was the first time I ever seen anybody, like out, not in a funeral, but in a hospital bed, gone. And her and I had like this really nice relationship, because back in the day, patients stayed in the hospital for a long time. And I just remember standing there going, like, what do I do? And so like, we're just kind of praying over her. And it was just like, Yeah. So I think what you're doing is really matching together this whole aspect of we are life, we are breath, we are our meditational minds, our ability to move from one space to another, and then moving people through this process into their passage or birth, whatever you want to call that. It just becomes more beautiful and not scary, a beautiful thing that's happening, instead of like full of anxiety and despair and
Yeah.
regrets and things. And I think what you're doing is so awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
anyway,
And thank you for having me today. Really feel honored to hold this space with you.
yeah, well, I'm glad you have that blessing, because that blessing is going to help a lot of people. And again, just one more time, what was your Facebook group page?
So Facebook, they can find me Tanya Lee Chamberland.
Okay.
Chamberlain spelled Chamberland.
Okay.
And if you search Tanya Lee Chamberlain, you will see my business page, which is Sacred Passage Doula. That will come up right away. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me. And then if they prefer email, it's all one lowercase Tanya Chamberlain at hotmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tanya, for being here with us today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please pass this along.
Thank
Everybody
you.
needs it. Yeah, everybody needs this. And I just want to say thanks again. See you later.
Thank you.